Travelers stumbled backward as the German Shepherd lurched forward, his powerful body straining against the leash. The blue hard-shell suitcase sat motionless near gate 14, yet Max's reaction made it seem like a ticking bomb. His barks echoed through the terminal, sharp, frantic, desperate. Officer Sarah Jenkins had never seen her partner like this. Not for drugs, not for weapons. This was different. Max clawed at the suitcase zipper, whining between barks, his entire body trembling with urgency. Sarah pulled hard on the leash, but the 80-pound shepherd refused to budge, digging his paws into the polished floor. Other officers rushed over, shouting commands to clear the area. Passengers grabbed their children, phones out, recording everything. "Back away from the bag," Sarah commanded the crowd, her hand instinctively moving to her radio. "We need bomb squad." But Max wasn't sitting. He wasn't giving the explosive alert. He was tearing at the luggage like something inside was dying. His teeth scraped against the hard shell. His nose pressed into every gap, sniffing frantically, whimpering with an emotion Sarah had never heard from him before. Terror. "Whose bag is this?" Sarah shouted over Max's barking. "Who owns this luggage?" Silence. Passengers exchanged confused glances. No one stepped forward. Sarah's supervisor barked into his radio. "We're evacuating the terminal. Do not touch that bag until—" Max lunged again, this time biting the zipper pull, yanking it sideways. The sound of metal teeth separating cut through the chaos. And when Sarah Jenkins finally looked inside that blue suitcase, she felt her heart stop. Because what she discovered was more horrifying than any weapon, any drug shipment, any explosive device she'd encountered in 7 years of service. Before we dive in, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And honestly, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these incredible stories reach. And stay with us because this story will leave you absolutely stunned. The international terminal at Metropolitan Airport hummed with its familiar Tuesday morning rhythm. Announcements crackled overhead in 3 languages while travelers shuffled through security lines, dragging roller bags and juggling coffee cups. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the endless tide of humanity flowing toward departure gates. Everything felt routine, predictable, ordinary. Officer Sarah Jenkins walked her usual patrol route with Max trotting beside her, his K9 service vest gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Max, a 5-year-old German shepherd with sharp eyes and sharper instincts, was known throughout the airport police unit as one of the best detection dogs in the state. His nose had uncovered smuggled narcotics worth millions, identified concealed weapons, and even detected unregistered explosives in luggage twice before. But more than his training, it was the bond between Sarah and Max that made them exceptional. They read each other's body language like a language all their own. A subtle ear twitch meant Max detected something worth investigating. A slight tail wag meant all clear. 7 days a week, they moved through crowds as one unit, protecting thousands of travelers who would never know their names. "Quiet morning?" Officer Daniels remarked as he passed them near the baggage claim area. "Almost too quiet." Sarah smiled. "Don't jinx it. Last time you said that, we spent 6 hours dealing with that custom smuggling case." Daniels laughed, adjusting his belt. "Fair point. I'll keep my mouth shut." Sarah continued walking, her eyes scanning the terminal with practiced efficiency. Families reuniting near arrivals. Business travelers typing furiously on laptops. A couple arguing quietly over missed connections. Nothing unusual, nothing that set off her internal alarms honed by years of patrol work. Max walked calmly at her side, his nose occasionally lifting to sample the air. His tail swayed in that relaxed rhythm that meant everything was normal. Just another Tuesday. Just another shift. Then Max stopped. His body went rigid. His ears shot forward. His nose tilted upward, nostrils flaring as he processed something Sarah couldn't detect. She felt the leash tighten in her hand. "Max, what is it, boy?" The German Shepherd's head swiveled toward the seating area near Gate 14, his focus locked onto something in the distance. A blue hard-shell suitcase sitting abandoned near a row of black vinyl chairs. No owner nearby, no claim tag visible. Max's tail dropped, his breathing changed, and then he pulled. Not the controlled pull of a trained detection dog following procedure. This was raw, desperate force. Max lunged toward that blue suitcase like his life depended on reaching it, nearly yanking Sarah off her feet. "Max, heel!" Sarah commanded, but he didn't respond. His training, his discipline, his years of perfect obedience, all of it evaporated in that moment. Something was wrong, terribly, urgently wrong. And Sarah Jenkins was about to discover just how wrong things could get. What happens next will shock you to your core. Keep watching. Sarah Jenkins arrived at Metropolitan Airport at 5:47 a.m., just like she had every Tuesday for the past 3 years. The parking garage was nearly empty, and the morning air still carried that pre-dawn chill that made her grateful for her thermal undershirt beneath the uniform. She grabbed her duty belt from the passenger seat, locked her car, and headed toward the K9 unit office on the ground floor. Max was already awake when she opened his kennel, his tail wagging in that controlled, professional way that somehow conveyed both excitement and discipline. She'd raised him from an 8-week-old puppy, personally overseeing every hour of his training at the State Police Academy. Now at 5 years old, Max had become more than her partner. He was family. "Morning, buddy," Sarah said softly, clipping his leash. Max pressed his nose against her hand, then sat perfectly still while she fastened his service vest. The routine was sacred between them. Vest on meant work mode. Vest off meant he could be a regular dog, chasing tennis balls, stealing her sandwich crusts, sleeping on the couch even though he wasn't supposed to. They walked through the terminal's back corridors, Max's nails clicking rhythmically against the tile. Sarah ran through her mental checklist: radio charged, duty weapon secured, evidence bags in her pocket, water bottle for Max clipped to her belt, everything in its place. Everything predictable. The shift briefing was short. Officer Daniels mentioned increased passenger volume due to the upcoming holiday season. Lieutenant Morris reminded everyone about new screening protocols near international arrivals. Standard stuff. Sarah barely took notes. She'd heard variations of the same briefing 100 times. But what made Sarah and Max exceptional wasn't following procedures. It was the way they moved beyond them. Max didn't just detect contraband, he read people. He could sense nervousness in a crowd of 500 travelers, isolate the one person avoiding eye contact, the passenger clutching their bag too tightly, the subtle behavioral tells that scream guilt, even when nothing was visibly wrong. And Sarah had learned to trust him completely. There were moments when Max would pause near someone who looked perfectly innocent, and Sarah's instinct would be to keep walking. But she'd learned to wait, to watch, to let Max's nose do what her eyes couldn't. More than once, that trust had led to major arrests. They started their patrol at Gate 27, working methodically through the departures level. Max sniffed luggage with practiced efficiency, his head moving in smooth arcs, processing thousands of scent molecules every second. A businessman rolled past with an overstuffed briefcase. Max sniffed, dismissed it, moved on. A family with 4 mismatched suitcases. Same process. Nothing. Sarah watched him work with quiet pride. This was the result of 18 months of intensive training, countless hours of repetition, and an intelligence that still surprised her. Last month, Max had detected narcotics hidden inside a false-bottom laptop case. The smuggler had used 3 layers of vacuum-sealed plastic and masking agents. Max found it in 7 seconds. The morning crowds began swelling around them. Tourists with oversized backpacks, parents juggling strollers and carry-ons, business travelers speed-walking toward security with coffee in hand and phones pressed to their ears. Max navigated through it all with calm focus, never distracted, never overwhelmed. Sarah checked her watch. 8:15 a.m., 2 hours into the shift, and everything felt routine, comfortable, safe. She had no idea that in less than 10 minutes, everything she thought she knew about her partner's abilities was about to be shattered by a blue suitcase sitting alone near gate 14. Max stopped so abruptly that Sarah nearly tripped over him. His entire body went rigid, muscles tensing beneath his thick coat like coiled springs. His ears shot forward, laser-focused on something Sarah couldn't identify. She followed his gaze across the seating area near gate 14, past clusters of travelers scrolling through phones and families sprawled across vinyl chairs. Then she saw it, a blue hard-shell suitcase standing upright near the end of a row of empty seats. No owner hovering nearby, no claim tag dangling from the handle, no one paying it any attention whatsoever. Just abandoned luggage in a high-security zone where abandoned luggage meant one thing: potential threat. "Max, check," Sarah commanded, giving him the signal to investigate. But Max didn't move with his usual controlled precision. He lunged forward, pulling the leash taut with such force that Sarah had to plant her feet to avoid being dragged. His breathing changed, rapid, shallow, almost panicked. She'd never seen him react this way. Not to narcotics, not to weapons. Not even during the explosive detection drills that were designed to trigger maximum alertness. They approached the suitcase together, Sarah's hand instinctively moving closer to her radio. Standard protocol for unattended luggage: identify, assess, secure the area if necessary. She scanned the immediate vicinity for anyone watching the bag, anyone who might claim ownership. Nothing. Just travelers minding their own business, completely unaware of the abandoned item 15 feet away. Max circled the suitcase once, his nose working overtime, nostrils flaring with each inhale. Then he froze directly in front of it. Sarah waited for the sit command, the unmistakable signal that Max had detected explosives. Every K-9 officer knew that signal. Sit meant bomb. Sit meant clear the terminal. Sit meant call the squad immediately. But Max didn't sit. Instead, he pressed his nose against the hard plastic shell, sniffing along the seam where the two halves met. His whining started low, barely audible, then grew louder. It wasn't his alert sound. It wasn't his "I found something" bark. This was something else entirely, something desperate. "Max, what is it?" Sarah knelt beside him, trying to read his behavior. His tail was tucked low, not wagging. His ears kept shifting between forward focus and flattened anxiety. Every instinct in his body was firing, but none of it matched his training signals. Then Max did something that made Sarah's blood run cold. He started scratching at the suitcase shell with his front paws, clawing frantically at the hard surface like he was trying to dig through it. The sound of nails scraping against plastic echoed through the gate area. His barking escalated, sharp, urgent, almost frantic. "Max, heel!" Sarah commanded, but he ignored her completely. In 5 years of partnership, Max had never ignored a direct command. Never. Other travelers were starting to notice now. Heads turned. Phones came out. A woman grabbed her child's hand and stepped backward. Sarah felt the familiar weight of eyes on her, that sensation of a situation spiraling from routine to critical in seconds. Max's paws scraped harder against the suitcase. His barking grew more desperate. He bit at the zipper, trying to pull it open with his teeth, his entire body shaking with urgency that defied explanation. "Step back, please," Sarah called out to the growing circle of onlookers. She keyed her radio with trembling fingers. "This is K-9 Unit 7. I have unattended luggage near Gate 14 with an unusual alert pattern, requesting backup and supervisor to scene immediately." The response crackled through almost instantly. "Copy that, Unit 7. Is the dog signaling explosives? Sarah watched Max tear at the suitcase with increasing desperation, his training completely abandoned, replaced by something primal and terrifying. Negative, she said quietly into the radio, her heart pounding. I don't know what he's signaling, but whatever's in this bag, my dog is trying to tell me someone's running out of time. Lieutenant Morris arrived within 90 seconds. His face already set in that hard expression Sarah recognized from every high-stakes situation she'd witnessed. Officer Daniels came right behind him, along with 2 airport security personnel who immediately began cordoning off the area with yellow tape. Passengers were being redirected away from Gate 14, their complaints and confused questions creating a buzz of background noise that made everything feel more chaotic. Jenkins, pull your dog back, Morris ordered, his voice cutting through the commotion. We're treating this as a potential explosive device until proven otherwise. Bomb squad is 20 minutes out. Sarah tugged at Max's leash, but the German Shepherd refused to budge. His paws scraped relentlessly at the suitcase shell, leaving white scratch marks across the blue surface. His whining had evolved into something between a bark and a howl, a sound Sarah had never heard him make before. It vibrated through her chest, primal and desperate. Sir, he's not giving the explosives alert, Sarah said, her voice strained from trying to hold Max back. He's trying to open it. He's trying to get inside. I don't care what he's trying to do, Morris snapped. Standard protocol applies. Nobody touches that bag until bomb squad clears it. Do you understand me, Officer Jenkins? Yes, sir. But even as she said it, Sarah felt something gnawing at her gut. Max was telling her something. Every instinct she'd learned to trust over 3 years of partnership was screaming that waiting 20 minutes was the wrong move. Daniels leaned closer, his voice low. Sarah, if there's something alive in there, don't finish that sentence. Morris cut him off sharply. We follow protocol. Period. Jenkins, get that dog under control or remove him from the scene. Sarah knelt beside Max, trying to calm him with a hand on his back. But his muscles were vibrating beneath her palm, his entire body locked in fight or flight mode. His eyes never left the suitcase, his nose pressed against every gap, every seam, frantically sniffing as if he was trying to communicate something words couldn't convey. 20 minutes. Bomb squad protocol meant securing the perimeter, bringing in specialized equipment, running preliminary scans. 20 minutes before anyone would even consider opening this bag, and Max was acting like someone had 20 seconds, not 20 minutes. Sarah looked at the suitcase, then at Max, then at Lieutenant Morris, who was already on his radio coordinating the bomb squad's arrival. Her hand moved to the suitcase handle before her brain fully registered the decision. The metal felt cold against her palm. Max's barking intensified, as if he knew she was about to do something, as if he was begging her to hurry. Jenkins, do not, Morris started, but Sarah was already crouching down, her fingers finding the zipper pull. The airport sounds faded to background static. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Max pressed against her side, still whining, still frantic, his breath hot and rapid against her arm. Officer, that is a direct order, Morris shouted, moving toward her. Sarah's fingers closed around the zipper. Protocol said wait. Training said follow orders. But 5 years of trusting Max, 5 years of watching him save lives, detect threats, and never once lead her wrong, told her that whatever was inside this bag couldn't wait another second. She pulled. The zipper sound cut through the terminal like a gunshot. Metal teeth separating one by one, the noise impossibly loud in Sarah's ears. She heard Daniel suck in a sharp breath, heard Morris curse behind her, heard passengers somewhere in the distance gasp as they realized what was happening. Max stopped barking. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. He pressed his nose to the opening gap, his body trembling against Sarah's leg. The zipper reached the corner. Sarah's hands were shaking now, but she kept pulling, kept opening, kept defying every rule she'd sworn to uphold. The suitcase fell open, and Sarah Jenkins felt the entire world stop. Pink. That was the first thing Sarah's brain registered. Soft pink fabric with little white polka dots, the kind you'd see on children's pajamas in any department store. But pajamas didn't belong in a suitcase. Pajamas belonged on beds, in homes, in places where children were safe and warm and loved. The toddler was curled in a fetal position, her small body fitted perfectly into the dimensions of the hard shell case, like she'd been carefully arranged there. Her blonde hair was matted against her forehead with sweat. One tiny hand clutched a white stuffed animal. A bear, Sarah thought, though it was hard to tell from the way the child gripped it against her chest. Her other arm was tucked beneath her head, as if she'd fallen asleep that way, or been placed that way. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. Then Sarah saw the child's chest. It rose, barely perceptible, then fell. Rose again. Shallow breaths. Too shallow. The rhythm was wrong. Too slow. Like her little body was running on fumes. "Oh my God," Daniels whispered behind her. "Oh my God, that's a child." The words broke the spell. Sarah's training kicked in, muscle memory overriding the shock that threatened to paralyze her. She reached into the suitcase, her hands trembling as she pressed 2 fingers against the child's neck, searching for a pulse. The skin was warm but clammy. The pulse was there, weak, thready, but present. "Get medical here now," Sarah shouted over her shoulder. "I need paramedics at gate 14 immediately. Child approximately 2 to 3 years old, unresponsive, shallow breathing." Morris was already on his radio, his voice sharp and urgent, all traces of anger about the protocol violation gone. "All units, we have a medical emergency at gate 14. I need EMT, I need pediatric support, and I need it now." Max pressed closer to Sarah, his nose gently sniffing the child's hair. His tail was still low, but the frantic energy had shifted to something else. Concern. Protection. He whined softly as if trying to wake her. Sarah carefully slid her hands beneath the toddler's small frame, lifting her from the suitcase with the kind of delicate urgency that came from knowing every second mattered. The child's head lolled against Sarah's shoulder. Dead weight. The stuffed bear tumbled from her grip, landing in the bottom of the empty suitcase with a soft thud. "Come on, sweetheart," Sarah murmured, cradling the girl against her chest. "Stay with me. Just stay with me." The child's skin felt too hot. Dehydration, Sarah thought. Possibly heat exhaustion. How long had she been in there? How long had she been trapped in that sealed case, breathing recycled air, her small body fighting to survive? Daniels appeared at her side with a bottle of water, unscrewing the cap. Sarah tilted it against the child's lips, letting just a few drops touch her tongue. No response. The water dribbled down the side of her mouth. "Where's medical?" Sarah called out, her voice cracking. 2 minutes out, Morris responded, kneeling beside them. His face had gone pale. "Is she breathing?" "Barely." Sarah adjusted the child in her arms, trying to keep her airway open. The pink pajamas had a pattern, little hearts scattered across the fabric. Someone had dressed this child. Someone had put her in these pajamas, probably tucked her into bed the night before, probably kissed her goodnight, and then someone had done this. Max suddenly barked once, sharp and clear. Sarah looked up to see the paramedics rushing through the cordoned-off area, their equipment bags bouncing against their legs as they ran. "Female toddler, approximately 3 years old," Sarah rattled off as they approached, forcing herself into a professional mode even as her hands shook. "Found sealed in luggage, unresponsive, breathing shallow and irregular, skin warm and clammy, possible dehydration and oxygen deprivation." The lead paramedic, a woman with kind eyes and quick hands, took the child from Sarah's arms with practiced efficiency. Within seconds, they had the toddler on a portable gurney, oxygen mask over her tiny face, IV line being prepped for her arm. Sarah stepped back, her arms suddenly empty, her uniform damp with the child's sweat. She watched the paramedics work with controlled urgency, their voices calm but clipped as they called out vitals and procedures. Max pressed against her leg, and Sarah's hand dropped to his head automatically, her fingers finding the familiar texture of his fur. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved her, Max. You saved her life." But even as she said it, one terrible question echoed through her mind. Who would put a child in a suitcase? And where were they now? The paramedics moved with choreographed precision, their hands working in synchronized rhythm as they fought to stabilize the toddler. The oxygen mask fogged slightly with each shallow breath. A good sign, Sarah told herself, watching from just beyond the circle of activity. At least she was breathing. "Heart rate's climbing," the lead paramedic announced, adjusting the IV drip. 72, 75. Coming up. Her partner, a younger man with close-cropped hair, held a pen light to the child's eyes, checking pupil response. Reactive but sluggish. Definite signs of dehydration. We need to get her to County General immediately. Sarah watched the little girl's chest rise and fall beneath the oxygen mask, more steadily now than moments before. Color was slowly returning to her cheeks, replacing that frightening grayish pallor. Her fingers twitched slightly, and for a brief second, her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Lieutenant Morris stood beside Sarah, his radio crackling with updates from dispatch. "We're running facial recognition through missing persons databases. Every agency within 500 miles has been notified." But Sarah wasn't listening. Her eyes had drifted back to the open suitcase, still sitting where she'd left it, now surrounded by evidence markers that other officers had placed around the scene. The white stuffed bear lay at the bottom, one of its button eyes catching the fluorescent light. Something about it pulled at her attention. "Daniels," Sarah said quietly, motioning him over. "That bear. Can you bag it as evidence before they move the suitcase?" He nodded, pulling on latex gloves as he approached the luggage. Max followed him, his nose still working, still processing the sense that humans couldn't detect. Daniels carefully lifted the stuffed animal, holding it by one ear as he examined it. "Wait," he said suddenly. "There's something here." Sarah moved closer, Max at her heels. Daniels turned the bear over, revealing a small fabric tag sewn into the back seam, the kind parents sometimes use to label their children's belongings for daycare or school. But this wasn't a standard name tag. Handwritten in permanent marker, slightly faded but still legible, was an address. 2847 Maple Grove Lane, Sarah read aloud, pulling out her phone. "That's only 15 minutes from here." Morris was on his radio immediately. "I need a patrol unit dispatched to 2847 Maple Grove Lane. Possible connection to our victim. Approach with caution and report what you find." The lead paramedic called out from the gurney. "We're transporting now. County General Trauma Unit is expecting us." Sarah watched as they wheeled the little girl toward the exit, the oxygen mask still secured over her face, the IV bag swaying with the movement. She wanted to follow them, to stay with that child until someone who loved her arrived. But her job wasn't finished here. "Jenkins," Morris said, his tone measured, "about the protocol violation." "I know, sir." Sarah met his eyes steadily. "I'll accept whatever disciplinary action you deem appropriate, but I'd do it again." For a moment, Morris just stared at her. Then he glanced at Max, who was sitting perfectly at Sarah's side now, his professional demeanor restored. "That dog of yours just saved a life. I'm not sure disciplinary action is what this situation calls for." He paused, then added more quietly, "You trusted your partner's instincts. That took courage." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, but she couldn't celebrate. Not yet. Not while whoever did this was still out there. "Sir, we need to check security footage," she said, her mind already racing ahead. Whoever left that suitcase couldn't have gone far. The airport has cameras covering every exit, every terminal. If we move fast— Already on it, Morris interrupted. Security's pulling footage from the last 2 hours. Every camera within 100 yards of Gate 14. Daniel secured the stuffed bear in an evidence bag, sealing it carefully. This address might be where she was taken from. If it's her home, we could have parents going out of their minds right now. The radio on Morris's belt crackled to life. Lieutenant, this is Unit 12 responding to Maple Grove Lane. We're at the residence now. Door's been forced open. Signs of struggle inside. No occupants present, but we've got children's toys, photographs on the walls. Looks like a family lives here. Sarah's jaw tightened. A home invasion. A child stolen from her own house, drugged or somehow kept quiet, stuffed into a suitcase and abandoned at an airport. But why? Was it a kidnapping gone wrong? A custody dispute turned violent? Human trafficking? Max whined softly beside her, as if sensing the darkness of her thoughts. We need that security footage, Sarah said firmly. Whoever did this is still in this airport, and we're going to find them. The security office was cramped and windowless, illuminated by the glow of 24 monitors displaying live feeds from every corner of the airport. Sarah stood behind the security supervisor, a middle-aged man named Garcia, who was rapidly cycling through camera angles with practiced efficiency. Max lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes remained alert, tracking every movement in the room. Gate 14, you said. Garcia's fingers flew across the keyboard. What's our time frame? Start at 7:30 a.m. and move forward, Morris instructed, leaning over Garcia's other shoulder. We need to see who left that suitcase. The monitor flickered, then settled on a wide-angle view of the gate area. The timestamp read 7:31 a.m. Passengers moved through the frame and fast forward, their movements jerky and accelerated. Empty seats, a custodian pushing a trash cart, a family settling in near the windows. There, Sarah said suddenly, pointing at the screen. Slow it down. Garcia reduced the playback speed to normal. At 7:47 a.m., a figure entered the frame from the left. A man wearing a dark gray hoodie pulled low over his face, head ducked down in a way that seemed deliberate. He was average height, average build, nothing immediately distinctive except for the careful way he moved, as if hyper-aware of the cameras. He was pulling the blue hardshell suitcase. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The man rolled the suitcase to the end of a row of seats, positioning it upright near a support column. Then he did something that made Sarah's stomach turn. He crouched down beside it, one hand resting on top of the case for a long moment. The gesture was almost gentle, protective even. What's he doing? Daniels muttered from behind them. The man's lips moved. He was speaking to the suitcase, speaking to the child inside. Sarah couldn't hear the words, but she could see his body language, tense, nervous, conflicted. He glanced over his shoulder twice, scanning the terminal as if looking for someone. Then he checked his watch. Once, twice, 3 times in the span of 30 seconds. He's waiting for someone, Sarah said quietly. This was supposed to be a handover. The man stood abruptly, his head swiveling towards something off camera to the right. His body language changed instantly, shoulders tensing, hands clenching into fists. He looked at his watch again, then back at the suitcase. For a moment he seemed frozen, torn between staying and leaving. Come on, Morris urged the screen. Show us your face. But the man kept his head down, the hoodie obscuring most of his features. He took one step away from the suitcase, then stopped. Looked back at it. His hand reached out, almost touching it again, then pulled back. He doesn't want to leave it, Sarah observed. Look at him. He's hesitating. The man checked his watch one final time, 7:52 a.m. Then he pulled out a phone, his thumbs moving rapidly across the screen, texting someone, calling someone. After 15 seconds, he lowered the phone, stared at it as if waiting for a response that never came. Garcia zoomed in as much as the resolution would allow, but the hoodie and the angle made facial identification impossible. All they could see was a sliver of jaw, possibly clean-shaven, and a glimpse of dark hair. The man shoved the phone back into his pocket. He took one last look at the blue suitcase, his body language radiating something that looked almost like regret. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the main terminal, disappearing from the camera's view at 7:53 a.m. "That's it?" Daniels asked. "He just leaves her there?" "The handover never happened," Morris said grimly. "Whoever was supposed to meet him didn't show, so he panicked and abandoned the child." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. This wasn't random. This was organized. A planned exchange in a public place where a crying child wouldn't draw immediate attention, where people were used to stress and chaos. But something went wrong. The buyer didn't show, or got spooked, or changed their mind. And a 3-year-old girl nearly died because of it. "Garcia, follow him," Sarah commanded. "Every camera. I want to know where he went." Garcia's fingers danced across the keyboard, switching between camera feeds. They tracked the hooded figure through the main terminal, past restaurants and shops, toward the ground transportation area. The timestamp advanced to 7:58 a.m. The man moved quickly but not running, just another traveler hurrying to catch a ride. "There," Garcia said, freezing the frame. "Exit 7, taxi stand." The man stepped through the sliding doors and disappeared into the morning sunlight. Sarah was already moving toward the exit, Max leaping to his feet beside her. "He's still here. If he took a taxi, he couldn't have gotten far. Max can track him." Morris grabbed his radio. "All units, suspect is a male, average height and build, wearing a gray hoodie, last seen exiting at ground transportation, taxi stand. Consider him armed and dangerous." Sarah burst through the security office door, Max's leash tight in her hand. Somewhere in this airport, the man who'd nearly killed a child was trying to escape, but Max had his scent, and Sarah had no intention of letting him get away. Sarah sprinted back to gate 14, her boots pounding against the polished terminal floor. Max ran beside her, matching her pace perfectly, his body coiled with energy that had been building since the moment he'd first detected that suitcase. Other officers had cordoned off the entire area now, yellow tape stretched across a 20-foot perimeter. Evidence markers scattered around the scene like strange geometric flowers. "I need that suitcase handle," Sarah called out to the evidence tech, a young woman named Chen, who was photographing the luggage from multiple angles. Chen looked up, confused. "It's evidence. I need my dog to track the suspect," Sarah interrupted, breathing hard from the run. 5 seconds. Just give me 5 seconds with the handle." Chen glanced at Lieutenant Morris, who had arrived right behind Sarah. He nodded once, sharp and decisive. Chen stepped aside. Sarah guided Max to the suitcase, her hand steady on his vest despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Max, seek." She pointed at the telescoping handle, the exact spot where the hooded man's hands had gripped the metal. "Find him, boy. Find." Max's nose pressed against the handle, his nostrils flaring as he inhaled deeply. Once, twice, 3 times. His entire body went rigid as he processed the scent, cataloging it, burning it into his memory in a way that Sarah would never fully understand, but had learned to trust completely. Then his head snapped up, ears forward, eyes locked on something beyond the gate area. He pulled against the leash with such sudden force that Sarah had to brace herself. "He's got it," she said. "He's got the trail." Max didn't wait for additional commands. He lunged forward, following an invisible path that only he could detect, pulling Sarah through the terminal with singular focus. They moved past confused travelers, around luggage carts, through clusters of people waiting at gates. Max's nose stayed low, sweeping side to side, correcting his trajectory with minute adjustments. A woman with a perfume sample cart tried to approach them. Max didn't even glance her direction. A child dropped a bag of chips directly in their path, the smell of processed food filling the air. Max stepped over them without breaking stride. His training and instinct had narrowed to a single purpose: follow the scent. They reached the main terminal, where hundreds of people flowed in chaotic patterns between shops and restaurants. Sarah's radio crackled with Morris's voice. "Jenkins, what's your location?" "Heading toward ground transportation," Sarah responded, slightly breathless. "Max has a solid trail." The scent led them past a coffee shop where the smell of espresso and cinnamon rolls hung thick in the air, past a newsstand with magazines and candy bars displayed in colorful rows, past a children's play area where toddlers climbed on foam structures while their parents watched from benches. Max ignored it all, his focus absolute. Daniels appeared beside them, jogging to keep pace. "How strong is the trail?" "Strong," Sarah said. "He's not hesitating at all. The suspect came through here within the last hour." They descended an escalator, Max pulling so hard that Sarah had to wrap the leash around her wrist for better control. At the bottom, the terminal opened into the ground transportation area, sliding glass doors leading outside, taxi stands visible through the windows, shuttles and cars circling in an endless loop. Max's pace increased. His breathing came faster, sharper. Sarah recognized the signs. They were getting close. The sliding doors opened automatically as they approached. Morning sunlight and exhaust fumes hit them simultaneously. Outside, taxis lined up in designated lanes, their drivers leaning against hoods, smoking cigarettes, checking phones. Passengers loaded luggage into trunks. Shuttle buses hissed to stops and pulled away. Max's head swung left, then right, his nose working overtime to filter through the competing smells of gasoline, rubber, cigarette smoke, and hundreds of different people. For a moment, Sarah worried the scent trail had dispersed in the open air, scattered by wind and traffic. Then Max froze. His body went completely still, one paw raised slightly off the ground. His ears rotated forward like satellite dishes, locking onto a signal. Sarah followed his gaze across the taxi lanes to a concrete pillar near the far end of the pickup area. A man in a gray hoodie stood partially hidden behind it, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing animatedly as he spoke to someone. His back was to them, but the posture, the build, the clothing, it all matched. Max released a low growl, the first truly aggressive sound Sarah had heard from him all morning. "Target acquired," Sarah whispered into her radio. "Gray hoodie, east end of taxi stand. Behind pillar number 7. He's on a phone call." Morris's response was immediate. "Units converging on your position. Do not engage until backup arrives." But the man turned slightly and Sarah caught a glimpse of his profile. Young, maybe late 20s, a tattoo visible on his neck above the hoodie collar. And something else. Panic in his movements, the way his eyes darted around, searching for threats. He was going to run. "Max," Sarah said quietly, her hand tightening on the leash. "Ready?" The German shepherd's muscles bunched beneath his coat, coiled and ready to spring. They had one chance to stop this man before he disappeared into the city beyond the airport, and Sarah wasn't about to let that happen. The man's head snapped up mid-sentence, his survival instinct somehow sensing the danger before his eyes confirmed it. His gaze locked onto Sarah and Max across the taxi lanes, and for a split second, time seemed to freeze. Recognition flashed across his face, not of Sarah specifically, but of what she represented. Police, K-9 unit, the end of whatever escape plan he'd been formulating. His phone dropped from his hand, clattering against the concrete. Then he ran. "Suspect is running!" Sarah shouted into her radio, already releasing Max's leash. Max, apprehend! The German Shepherd exploded forward like a missile, his powerful legs eating up the distance between them in seconds. The man sprinted toward the passenger pickup lane, weaving between idling taxis and startled travelers, who jumped aside as the chase erupted around them. He vaulted over a concrete barrier, stumbled, caught himself, kept running, but Max was faster. Sarah ran behind them, her lungs burning, her duty belt heavy against her hips. She watched Max close the gap with terrifying efficiency, 10 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet. The suspect glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes wide with terror as 80 pounds of trained police dog bore down on him. "Stop! Police!" Sarah commanded, knowing he wouldn't listen, needing to give the verbal warning anyway. The man cut left, trying to lose Max in the maze of vehicles. He ducked behind a white shuttle van, then emerged on the other side, heading for the exit ramp that led to the main road. If he made it to the street, into traffic, they could lose him. He could disappear into the city, vanish into whatever network had planned this kidnapping. Max anticipated the move. Instead of following the man's exact path, he cut the angle, his tactical training overriding pure chase instinct. He burst around the front of the shuttle van just as the suspect cleared the other side, positioning himself directly in the man's escape route. The man tried to stop, his shoes skidding on the pavement. Too late. He collided with Max, who stood his ground like a furry brick wall. The impact sent the suspect stumbling backward, arms windmilling as he fought for balance. Max didn't attack. He didn't need to. He simply stood between the man and freedom, teeth bared, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. Every muscle in his body radiated a simple message. "You're not going anywhere." The suspect tried to sidestep left. Max mirrored him, tried to move right. Max blocked that too, his eyes never leaving the man's face, reading his body language, predicting his next move before he made it. "Don't move!" Sarah arrived, weapon drawn, her voice sharp with authority. "Hands where I can see them. Now!" The man's hands shot up, his chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. It wasn't supposed to." "On the ground, face down, hands behind your back," Sarah commanded. For a moment, the suspect hesitated, his eyes darting around as if still searching for an escape route. Max took one deliberate step forward, that growl intensifying. The man's resolve crumbled. He dropped to his knees, then slowly lowered himself to the pavement, his cheek pressed against the concrete. Sarah holstered her weapon and pulled out her handcuffs, moving quickly while keeping Max in her peripheral vision. "Max, watch." The German Shepherd repositioned himself near the suspect's head, close enough that the man could feel his breath, could see those sharp teeth inches from his face. It was a powerful deterrent, more effective than any weapon Sarah carried. She secured the first cuff around his right wrist, then pulled his left arm back, clicking the second cuff into place. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, and attempted human trafficking." Daniels and 2 other officers arrived, surrounding the scene. Daniels grabbed the suspect's arm, hauling him to his feet with less gentleness than necessary. "The girl," the man gasped, his voice hoarse. Is she alive?" Sarah stepped close to him, her eyes hard as steel. "No thanks to you. You left a 3-year-old child to die in a suitcase. What kind of monster does that?" "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice breaking. "They said they'd kill my sister if I didn't." "Save it for your lawyer," Daniels cut him off, pulling him toward a patrol car that had just pulled up, its lights flashing red and blue against the morning sky. Sarah watched them lead him away, her hands still trembling with adrenaline. Max pressed against her leg, his tail finally wagging, the tension draining from his body now that the threat was contained. "Good boy," Sarah whispered, kneeling down to wrap her arms around him. "You're such a good boy." Max licked her face once, then sat proudly, his head held high. He'd done his job. He'd saved a life, and he'd caught the bad guy. But as Sarah stood and watched the patrol car drive away with the suspect in the back seat, she knew this wasn't over. Someone had ordered this kidnapping. Someone was supposed to receive that child at the airport. Someone was still out there. The case was far from closed, but at least now they had a chance at answers. County General Hospital's pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and hope. Sarah stood outside room 314, Max sitting patiently at her side, watching through the observation window as nurses moved efficiently around the small figure in the bed. The toddler, identified now as 3-year-old Chloe Mitchell, had been stabilized 4 hours ago. IV fluids had corrected her dehydration. Oxygen therapy had restored her levels to normal. But she hadn't woken up yet. Sarah had filed her report, answered Lieutenant Morris's questions, and documented every detail of the arrest. The suspect, identified as Marcus Webb, was being processed downtown. Initial interrogation revealed he was a low-level courier in a trafficking ring, coerced into transporting the child by threats against his family. The FBI had taken over the case, following leads that stretched across 3 states, but none of that mattered to Sarah right now. All that mattered was the little girl in pink pajamas who'd spent hours trapped in darkness, fighting for every breath. The door opened, and a nurse Sarah recognized from earlier stepped out. "Officer Jenkins, the parents just arrived. They'd like to thank you." Sarah's chest tightened. She'd been dreading this moment, unsure what to say to people whose child had been stolen from their home, drugged and abandoned in an airport. What words could possibly address that kind of trauma? "Of course," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The nurse smiled gently. "And the doctor said it's okay for your partner to come in. I think Chloe might want to meet the hero who saved her life." Inside the room, a man and woman sat on either side of the hospital bed, their hands clasped together over their daughter's small form. The woman's eyes were red from crying. The man's jaw was clenched so tight Sarah could see the muscles working beneath his skin. When they looked up at Sarah, the raw gratitude in their faces nearly broke her composure. "Officer Jenkins," the woman said, her voice trembling, "they told us what you did, what your dog did. If Max hadn't, we can never repay you," the father added, his voice cracking. "Never." Sarah shook her head. "I was just doing my job. Max was doing his. We're both glad we could help." Max moved closer to the bed, his nose lifting slightly as he caught Chloe's scent. His tail wagged slowly, gently, as if he understood the fragility of the moment. And then something miraculous happened. Chloe's eyelids fluttered. Once, twice. Her tiny hand moved slightly against the white hospital sheets. The heart monitor's rhythm changed, beeping faster as she transitioned from sleep to wakefulness. "Chloe," her mother gasped, leaning forward. "Baby girl, can you hear me?" The toddler's eyes opened, beautiful blue eyes that blinked against the light, confused and disoriented. She looked at her mother, then her father, recognition slowly dawning on her face. "Mama," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mother dissolved into tears, pressing Chloe's hand to her cheek. "I'm here, sweetheart. Daddy's here. You're safe now." "You're safe." Chloe's gaze drifted around the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with a child's bewildered curiosity. Then her eyes found Max. The German shepherd stood quietly near the foot of the bed, his brown eyes gentle, his posture calm and non-threatening. For a moment, Chloe just stared. Then slowly a smile spread across her small face, the kind of pure, uncomplicated joy that only children possess. "Puppy," she said, her voice stronger now. She lifted one hand, pointing directly at Max. "Big puppy." Max's tail wagged harder. He took one careful step closer, then lowered his head, offering himself for inspection the way he did with all children. Gentle, patient, understanding somehow that this tiny human needed softness, not strength. "That's Max," Sarah said softly. kneeling beside the bed so she was at Chloe's eye level. "He's the one who found you. He's a very special puppy." "He saved you, honey," Chloe's father added, his voice thick with emotion. "That dog is a hero." Chloe reached out with one small hand, her IV line trailing behind her wrist. Max moved closer, allowing her fingers to brush against his fur. The toddler giggled, a sound so pure and innocent that it made everything Sarah had risked that morning worthwhile. "Nice puppy," Chloe murmured, her eyes already growing heavy again, exhaustion reclaiming her. "Very nice puppy," her mother agreed, stroking her daughter's hair as Chloe's eyes closed once more, this time in peaceful, healing sleep. Sarah stood, her vision blurring slightly. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. Max pressed against her leg, and she dropped her hand to his head, her fingers finding the familiar texture of his fur. They left the room quietly, letting the family have their reunion. In the hallway, Sarah finally let out the breath she'd been holding since that morning. Max looked up at her, his tail wagging, his eyes bright. "You did good today, partner," Sarah whispered. "Really, really good." Max barked once, soft and satisfied. Just another day's work for Metropolitan Airport's finest K9 unit, but Sarah knew it was so much more than that. Today they'd saved a life. Today they'd brought a family back together. Today they'd proven that sometimes trusting your instincts and your partner mattered more than any protocol. And that was everything. If you like this video and want to see more just like it, then make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And I'm genuinely curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far these incredible stories reach.